Back on the road to Manhwa, Rihwa asked Manager Kim exactly how much they needed to collect from the sect, listing the principal they lent yesterday plus the interest. Then Manager Kim dropped a bombshell on her, asking how much she thought a human life was worth. Obviously, she was stunned. He coolly suggested that compensation for attempted murder, 100,000 gold coins, sounded pretty reasonable. Rihwa's jaw hit the floor. 100,000 gold coins? You could buy an entire sect with that, she exclaimed. Manager Kim, ever the negotiator, casually offered a discount, dropping it to 10,000 gold coins. Now it all clicked for Rihwa. No wonder you wanted to come to Manhwa. You planned this from the very beginning, did not you? But she had another doubt. Even if they somehow had that kind of money, would they just hand it over? Manager Kim's response was cold. If they do not. So what? We can just take something. That left Rihwa speechless. A terrifying thought crossed Rihwa's mind. Was he planning to drain their internal chi, just like he did with the heavenly demon, Jicheon? If he drained all the internal chi from the Manhwa sect, he'd become the public enemy of the entire martial world. As they walked through the night forest, Manager Kim asked Rihwa if she knew what Manhwa's true asset was. It was not money, nor was it their martial arts, he said. Then he dropped another cryptic line. It was the time they had accumulated over the years. And something that defied all common sense, he added, with a knowing look. Back in the present, the Manhwa disciples were unleashing their Plum Blossom Sword Formation's second form, the Plum Blossom Wild Dance. One disciple thrust a powerful sword strike at Kim, but he gracefully dodged it like it was nothing. The sword slash tore through everything in its path, leaving a blazing trail of destruction. Another disciple swung horizontally at Kim, but he just hopped lightly over the blade, dodging effortlessly. More disciples came at him with the same attack, but Kim sidestepped every single one like a pro. Above them, countless pink streams of energy converged with falling plum blossoms, forming a massive floral vortex. Hyunjong watched in horror as Manager Kim dodged the Plum Blossom Wild Dance like it was child's play. Are those really the movements of a human? He wondered. Desperate to buy time until the formation was complete, Hyunjong yelled for the rest of the disciples to join the fight. The disciples hesitated, but Hyunjong's order was clear. All Plum Blossom Snowsmen, prepare to fight to the death. So they charged, seeing another wave of disciples rushing at him. Manager Kim let out a sigh. Then he stomped his foot on the ground, releasing a burst of energy that shattered the earth around him. Suddenly, both the debris and the Mount Hua disciples found themselves floating in midair, their faces filled with utter shock and confusion. Manager Kim gathered energy in his hand and shoved a hovering boulder forward. The rock shot straight ahead like a bullet. It slammed directly into one disciple's face, knocking him unconscious on the spot. Talk about a brutal wake-up call. Then Kim launched several more stones at the other disciples, who screamed in pain as they got hit. Rihwa stood by with a detached expression, watching Kim's entire performance unfold. Honestly, she looked pretty cool, just observing the chaos. Kim, ever the calm professional, remarked that the Mount Hua sect was not what it used to be, throwing inexperienced disciples into a slaughter like this. But then Kim suddenly sensed something glowing behind him. It was the Plum Blossom Sword Formation's third form, Plum Blossom Falling Stars. The flower formed by the earlier formation had finally reached its complete state. So this is what they were waiting for, Kim said, looking up at the radiant blossom. Suddenly, a powerful golden light flared in the palm of his hand. That light took shape, forming a sword made of pure spiritual energy. Hyunjong's jaw dropped. He stopped the sword force with his bare hand. With a single slash of his newly formed sword, Kim cleaved the formation in two, splitting the Plum Blossom Formation right down the middle. The elders and disciples of Mount Hua could only gape in helpless awe at the sheer power Kim displayed. The formation shattered in a massive explosion, sending plum blossoms scattering everywhere. Once the blast subsided, only falling petals remained, creating a surprisingly poetic scene. Around Kim, the Mount Hua disciples lay groaning on the ground, nursing the bruises from his fists. The disciples who felt his strength began to back off, but Hyunjong stood there, mouth agape, unable to believe his eyes. The Plum Blossom Sword Formation was completely shattered? Hyunjong muttered in disbelief. How? What kind of monstrous internal chi is this? Kim strode toward Hyunjong and said, Now we can finally have a proper conversation. Getting right in his face, Kim added, Shall we begin the settlement, valued customer? Hyunjong looked at Kim with fearful eyes and stammered. Did? I make the wrong decision? He whispered, instead of choosing to fight. If I would simply handed over Cheong Sang, Would things have ended like this? Would things have turned out differently? Kim sighed and said, perhaps, but Manhwa would never make that choice, just like 30 years ago. He planned this, a disciple cried out in shock. He planned all of this from the very beginning, lending money to Cheong Sang and burying him in debt, using that as an excuse to set foot in Manhwa, then demanding an outrageous amount in compensation. Everything was a stepping stone for this very moment. He thoroughly backed Manhwa into a corner, forcing us to draw our swords. Hyunjong let out a bitter laugh. He. From the start, there was never a right choice for Manhwa. No matter what we chose, it would have ended like this anyway. So Hanjong asked him one last thing. With skills like yours, you could have just marched up Manhwa and demanded whatever you wanted. Why did you bother using Cheong Sang? The martial world is ruled by the law of the jungle. If you have power, you can get whatever you want. With Manager Kim's martial prowess, he could have broken through Manhwa's gates, held a blade to the sect leader's throat, and demanded whatever he pleased. No one could have stopped him. Manager Kim had the power to do just that. Yet, this man did not. He created a debt, established a justification, and forced Manhwa to draw the first sword. If the world becomes a place where the strong naturally plunder the weak, Kim replied, then before long, the world will be filled with the size of the common people. Besides, Kim added with a grin, taking things by force is what highway robbers do. It is not like our Continental Bank is a band of thugs. Ha ha ha. Hyunjong stood there, speechless, thinking, as if he did not just take it by force anyway. Son of a... Kim turned to Rihwa. Miss Mack, apply the surcharge and recalculate the settlement. Yes, manager. Rihwa began recalculating Manhwa's debt. Each click of the abacus made Hyunjong more anxious, as if the sound was drowning him. We drew our sword but lost. And since we lost, the price naturally goes up, far higher than the initial amount, including the surcharge, Rihwa explained. The final number echoed through the hall. 50,000 gold coins. The elders gasped in horror. Hyunjong stammered, 50,000 gold? Excuse me, great hero Kim. Manhwa does not have that kind of money. Yes, valued customer. I figured it would be difficult to pay all at once, Kim said, as Hyunjong nodded desperately. When repayment is difficult, our other customers usually choose between two options. Two options. Kim flashed a villainous smile. First, paying with your body. By body, I mean your internal chi. Specifically, the internal chi of all the Plum Blossom swordsmen who attacked me. With a trembling voice, Hyunjong asked, then, what is the other one? Kim's smirk widened. Second, handing over something of equal value. You can give us something in Manhwa's possession that is worth 50,000 gold coins. Something worth 50,000 gold? Do not tell me you mean the manuals for the Plum Blossom sword art or the Violet Mist divine art. Anything but that, Hyunjong pleaded, clutching the precious texts. Kim let out a sigh. We do not accept secret manuals. Just having rumors that we possess a secret manual makes things far too troublesome. Yeah, that would be a total PR nightmare for the bank. Miss Mack, the last page of the ledger, Kim ordered casually, as if he had not just shattered an entire sect's pride. Accountant Rihwa, now sporting her dangerously sharp glasses, flipped open the ledger and held up a drawing of a sword. You could feel the tension spike. The moment Hyunjong saw that illustration, he freaked out. It was the Jew family's yellow dragon sword. Game recognized game, and this was a big deal, Hyunjong stammered. The Jew family's yellow dragon sword? What do you mean by that? Kim just laughed. Do not play dumb. Your voice is shaking way too much. Kim's tone dropped. It is here in the Manhwa sect, is not it? The imperial sword you received 30 years ago as payment for that incident. He knew exactly what he was after. Hyunjong's mind raced. How does this man know about that? The secret he thought was buried deep had just been unearthed. We'll call one sword instead of the 50,000 gold coins, Kim said, pointing at the ledger with a smug grin. Quite a bargain, is not it? Hyunjong panicked. I would rather give you the sect leader's token, or the manual for the Violet Mist, divine art. As so please, anything but the Jew family's yellow dragon sword. If word gets out that Manhwa surrendered it, we'll lose our place in the martial world, Hyunjong pleaded, grasping at straws. Kim folded his arms. This is my final offer. There will be no further negotiation. The bank manager was not bluffing. Make your choice. An icy silence blanketed the conversation as Hyunjong stood at a crossroads. Hyunjong stood there, deep in thought. Ah, I see. From the very beginning, what he wanted was this. It was like a chess master revealing his final move. Hyunyo. Yes, sect leader. The Jew family's yellow dragon sword. Bring it here. Hyunjong's voice was heavy with defeat. A moment later, Hyunjong placed the sword before Kim. The legendary blade was now on the table. Kim picked up the sword, sliding it from its sheath to inspect the goods. He had to make sure it was the real deal. Satisfied that it was authentic, he broke into a wide grin and graciously presented it to the esteemed sect leader. What a power move. Kim and Rihwa bowed cheerfully. Thank you, valued customer. Your loan has now been fully repaid. They were all business, even in victory. Kim respectfully held out his business card. This has been Manager Kim of the Continental Bank, along with Rihwa. They looked incredibly professional, like a debt-collecting dream team. They love you, valued customer. We look forward to serving you again. Kim walked away, leaving behind the wreckage of the once proud Manhwa sect. The disciples and elders stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Hyunjong, still clutching Kim's business card, sank into deep thought before finally speaking. Our Manhwa sect will seal its gates. The disciples were shocked by his decision for 10 years. Sealing the gates meant cutting off all external activity and locking everyone in. Hearing this, the disciples could not hold back their tears. Hyunjong's heart felt empty as he looked up at the night sky, moonlight filtering through the clouds, wondering if this choice could save his sect from its downfall. The plum blossoms have entered their season of falling, he murmured. No flower stays red for 10 days. The end.